Hello, everyone, and a big thank you to those joining us live, as well as those listening in later. I'm also delighted to welcome you warmly, our special guest today, who will be introduced shortly. My name is Dalia Bajis, and I am Senior Program Lead at FIP. Before we begin, dear colleagues, I would like to share that FIP's vision is a world where everyone benefits from access to safe, effective, and quality, affordable medicines and health technologies. Our mission is to support global health by enabling the advancement of pharmaceutical practice, sciences, and education. Today's event is titled Shaping the Future of Pharmacy Education, Unveiling the FIP Nanjing Statements Guidance Documents to 2030. So welcome, everybody. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to Professor Toyin Tofadi, the President of the Academic Pharmacy Section, and Professor Ralph Altieri, immediate past chair of the FIP Education, who are the co-chairs of the Nanjing Advisory Group and who will be chairing today's webinar. Additionally, I would like to acknowledge the support of FIP staff, including Dr. Ozge, Ozer, and Marianne van der Been, who are working behind the scenes to ensure the smooth running of today's event. Today's webinar promises to be both informative and engaging, offering interactive opportunities for audience participation. Throughout the session, attendees will have the chance to engage throughout live polls, making the experience more dynamic for you all and allowing for real-time feedback and input. So we encourage you to stick around and to actively participate in the upcoming discussions. As you can see on this slide, we have some announcements to share with you. Kindly note that this event will be recorded, live streamed on FIP YouTube channel, and the recording will be available at events.fip.org. To everyone listening, please feel free to submit your questions using the Q&A box provided later. I will do my absolute best with my colleagues on the line to manage them all, and we'll make sure to address as many of them as possible during the Q&A and panel discussion. You're also welcome to provide us with feedback. You're welcome to write to webinars at fip.org. And I would also like to take this opportunity to promote the benefits of membership with FIP, including our events and webinars such as this one. FIP is the global body representing over 4 million pharmacists, pharmaceutical scientists, and educators. So if you would like to become a member, please do register with us through the FIP website at fip.org. It gives me great pleasure at this point in time to share with you all that today we are joined by a highly esteemed panel of fabulous speakers, and I would like to thank each and every single one of them for taking the time to be with us today. I will not be reading out their names or bios at this point, but I will do so as I introduce each one of them ahead of their presentation. Welcome, everybody. Really delighted to have you all. Today's program, as outlined on the screen, followed by the welcome and the introduction, we will have some opening remarks by Professor Tofadi, followed by some remarks from our Chief Executive Officer, and then we will move on to presentations from all of our highly esteemed colleagues, starting with Professor Ian Bates about the FIP Global Education Conference going back to Nanjing in 2016, followed by a recap from Prof. Altieri about the first domain of the Nanjing Statements on shared global vision. Then Prof. Pascal Salama will talk about the update on Domain 2, which focuses on student admission processes, followed by Dr. Anisha Sanju from Australia, who will also give us an overview on Domain 3, Foundation Education. Dr. Yahya Chunara from South Africa will talk to us about Domain 4, Professional Competencies. This will be followed by a presentation from Dr. Jack Chen on Domain 5, Experiential Education. Dr. Wanda Davila will talk about Domain 6, Resources and Academic Staff. This will be followed by Prof. Lillian Azopardi talking about Domain 7, which looks at quality assurance and assessment, and we will conclude by an overview from Dr. Nadia on domain 8, focusing on research. Then we will move on to the panel discussion. And you can see from the program, we have a couple of poll questions that we would like to engage you through. Thank you. So the learning objectives for today, by the end of this webinar, we hope that our attendees will be able to discuss the global implications of the revised Nanjing Statements with a focus on how pharmacy and pharmaceutical science education is integrated into healthcare systems, especially in the post-COVID-19. Identify key updates in the Nanjing Statements, examining how these updates address emerging competency requirements and the shifts in global healthcare dynamics. To be able to potentially appraise the enhanced domains within the Nanjing Statements, including foundation education and experiential learning, and evaluate strategies for effective implementation across diverse educational settings. Being able to potentially examine the importance of quality assurance and assessment in sustaining high standards in pharmacy education, especially considering the recent global health challenges. And finally, to be able to identify some opportunities for advancing pharmacy research and discuss how we can integrate research into educational strategies to better prepare future workforce to meet the evolving healthcare needs. Without any further delays, it gives me great pleasure to introduce and welcome Professor Toyin Tufadi, the President of the Academic Pharmacy Section at FIP. Professor Tufadi is the president at Albany College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences in the United States. She was the dean and tenured professor at Howard University College of Pharmacy. In 2016, she was appointed as a member of the FIP Programming Committee and named an FIP Fellow in 2018, the first Black woman to receive this honor. In 2019, she was elected as member of the Academic Institution Members Advisory Board and appointed as Global Lead for Leadership Development on the Workforce Development Hub. Today is the FIP Hub. In 2020, she was elected as President-elect of the FIP Academic Pharmacy Section. She is also the co-chair of the Nanjing Statements Advisory Group. She has published several papers and given presentations on a variety of topics nationally and internationally. Her current areas of focus include leadership development, academic capacity, individual organizational leadership, and relationship teams. Welcome, Professor Tufadi, and the microphone is yours.
Thank you so much, Dalia. Hello, colleagues. How's everybody doing today? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. I am so glad that you're here joining us. And I see that many of you are letting us know where you're calling in from. I see Cyprus, I see Mauritius, I see Brazil, the USA, Nigeria, I see Panama, so many countries. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Today is a very special day, and as an overview of the work that we've been doing, I am happy to share the significance of the work, the revision process, and the collaborative efforts of the Nanjing Advisory Group. I will be happy to introduce you to superstar colleagues from around the world, and I'm so proud of everything that we have all done together to be able to share this with you today on a very important launching of the Nanjing Statements on pharmacy and pharmacy education. But first, I would like to know, how familiar are you with the Nanjing Statements? To do that, we will be launching a poll, and I invite you to participate. So here is the question for you. You will have about 30-some seconds to complete this poll. It should have been posted already. And when it is complete, we will be able to close the poll. Are you familiar with the FIP Nanjing Statements on pharmacy and pharmaceutical education? All right, well, it looks like we have about 71% who are indicating that they do not know too much about the Nanjing Statement. So this is a good day for you to be a part of this webinar. Thank you. As we go to the next slide, we're happy to bring this information to you so that way you can share some of this with your colleagues and in your institutions, and hopefully utilize it in a way that would benefit students, graduates, faculty, staff, and educators all around the world. This work is significant because it builds upon the global vision that FIP set forth in 2016. And the work was really to assemble key stakeholders and influencers in pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences from all around the world in Nanjing, China. How time has flown. You will hear more about that from Ian Bates later in the webinar. But our focus for the revision this time was really to provide a guidance document that will focus on the provision of appropriate and timely pharmaceutical education. We believe that pharmaceutical education that is timely will be crucial to equipping future pharmacists from all around the world, ensuring that their knowledge, skills, attitudes, values, and attributes will help them fulfill their roles and their mission. Furthermore, we recognize that all the educators and academics and pharmacists and pharmaceutical sciences that this work will impact actually would need to consider applying this in their local, regional, and national context, and even globally. So you will notice that it's also built on the foundation of the workforce development goals that are listed to the right there. Now, I am happy to let you know that on the next slide, that to start this work, many moons ago, it seems like, in 2022, Ralph Autier, who's actually the immediate past chair of the FIP education, he indicated that I should join him in co-chairing this work. And I want to use this opportunity to thank Ralph for his distinguished leadership with FIP, and also for the opportunity to be able to work together on this very, very important project. On the next slide, you'll also be able to see our superstar staff that have worked so hard with us to be able to get this going. And I tell you, this work was not easy, but when you have great people working on it together, you can do almost anything. And I want to use this opportunity as well to thank Dalia, Bajis, and Ozge for all the great work they have done to support the chairs, but also the committee. And the next slide will reflect the team of folks that I know from all around the world, and I can call friends from Malta, from the US, from UAE, Taiwan, Lebanon, Australia, Portugal, Ireland, Algeria, South Africa, Nepal. I'm telling you that indeed, as you read that document, please do take some time to do that. They put thoughtful efforts in making sure it would reflect exactly what their colleagues will be considering all around the world. Thank you, colleagues. I appreciate you. It was an honor to serve together. On the next slide, you will see that basically the way we went through the process, we started out in 22 deciding how it was going to go, but then in 23 and early 24, we went through a comprehensive update, and we met several times to be able to go through line by line, section by section, domain by domain. And the process involved, of course, all of the colleagues you saw earlier who represent the 6 WHO regions from around the world. We believed that world representation was necessary for the quality of the work that we needed to present to our colleagues. There were also multiple consultations that occurred among key stakeholders across FIP. And this final work guidance document that you see, and we'll be sharing the QR code in a few minutes, is really the summary of all the work we've been doing over the past couple of years, and we're so excited that we have come to this point. So in the next slide, you will see a few things that we did, and I'm just going to identify highlights. My colleagues will go from domain to domain and tell you in more details. A few things that we did is we went to domains instead of clusters, because we recognize that word use around the world can create confusion or can create understanding. So that was one thing we first did. Then the domains were restructured to mirror the pharmacy education journey. So really just reordering some of the steps of how that was from 1 through 8. we made sure that it would reflect pharmaceutical sciences alongside pharmacy practice, because we recognized that we had not included a lot of the pharmaceutical sciences type statements in the document, the original document that we had been using. And then also what we did is we made sure to incorporate the concepts of continuing professional development into the professional skills domain instead of having it as a separate domain by itself. What we did as well is acknowledge the fact that there is an actual FIP statement that has been published that will be revised on an ongoing basis. And therefore, we didn't believe we needed to duplicate that effort and referenced that statement that was done by several of our colleagues, superstar colleagues as well. On the next slide, you will see that some of the additional work we did was made sure that we listed an extensive list of professional skills. We recognize that we can't get all the skills into one document. And so we created appendices to be able to list what those were, organize those according to specialities, so that way we can offer our colleagues a buffet of options for them to consider as they're building curricula or choosing to grow their programs in different parts of the world. What we also did is we added a brand new domain. So research was a focus area we believed was very important. So domain 8 is research. It's brand new, and you'll be hearing from our colleague Nadia when she talks about that. The other thing is that we added a glossary, because as we were doing this work, as you can imagine, with colleagues from all around the world, we recognized that terminology in different regions meant different things. And so we said it's time for us to add a glossary to this work. So you will notice in the document that we ensured that our terminology and definitions were consistent, and we agreed on what to use and what not to use. And so when you're reading through, if you're curious about what a word means, it's not because we think we don't know English. It's just that same word in English could be meaning different things to different people. And we're so excited about that addition to the Nanjing statements. The pre-existing statements as well, actually, we discovered from lessons learned from the last time that when we were working on the Nanjing statements assessment tool, and I want to give credit to Dr. Miranda Law, who really spearheaded that project from Howard University many moons ago now, is that we had to really try and reword some of those statements and using action verbs so it'd be easier to assess, have we accomplished the statement or not in an institutional context. So we agreed as a group that we would, reword the statements in such a way that action verbs are included. So it would make it easier for individuals to use an assessment and monitoring tool and be able to say, okay, here is the outcome that we were trying to achieve, and have we achieved it or have we not? So on the next slide, I want to use this as an opportunity to say thank you very much for your time, your attention, your feedback, your support throughout the process. And as I wrap up, we have an opportunity to share with you the actual Nanjing statements on pharmaceutical education and pharmaceutical sciences, to use this QR code to be able to download the document, share it with your colleagues, encourage them to use it, share it with your leaders in your respective regions, share them with ministers, governmental agencies, whoever you believe needs to know what we are trying to do around the world. We thank you so much for your time. We thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much for your support and feedback throughout the process. And we look forward to engaging you throughout this journey. Right now, on the next slide, we have an opportunity to introduce remarks from our FIP CEO, Dr. Catherine Duggan. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Catherine Duggan. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the International Pharmaceutical Federation, FIP. As we gather here today to discuss the advancement of pharmacy and the pharmaceutical sciences education, it is crucial to recognise the evolving landscape of global healthcare and the pivotal role education plays in preparing our pharmaceutical workforce to meet these challenges effectively. The significance of our updated Nanjing Statements. The original Nanjing Statements, produced in 2016, have served as a cornerstone for the global advancement of pharmacy and pharmaceutical education. Given the unprecedented impact of the recent global health crises and technological advancements, updating these statements was essential to ensure they continued to serve and support our pharmacy educators, the academics, the practitioners, the administrators, and our pharmacy regulators effectively. So what is the global collaboration and impact? This revision process was a collaborative effort, engaging experts and stakeholders worldwide, including members from the FIP Council, various FIP constituencies. We ensured the active participation from FIP boards, the BPP, Board of Pharmaceutical Practice, the BPS, Board of Pharmaceutical Sciences, FIP Ed, FIP Education, the FIP Hub, and advisory groups, such as our technology, ethics, and regulatory advisory groups. This comprehensive approach embodied the One FIP philosophy, seamlessly integrating practice, science, and education. Through these engagements, not only have we enriched the content of the Nanjing Statements, but we have also ensured their relevance and applicability across the diverse healthcare and educational systems. So what are the goals and the applications of the updated statements? These updated Nanjing Statements are designed to support educational institutions and providers of education in continuously enhancing the quality of provision. They serve as a framework for aligning the educational strategies with the pressing needs of the healthcare professionals, emphasizing practical outcomes and applications. Looking ahead, it's really important when implementing these updated statements that it's essential to shape a pharmaceutical workforce that is adaptable, knowledgeable, and highly skilled. Our goal looking ahead is not only to respond to current needs here and now, but to prepare for future challenges and opportunities in healthcare. In conclusion, I thank you all once again for your commitment to advancing pharmacy education. The discussions we have today and the actions we take following this webinar will contribute significantly to our shared goals of improving global health through better pharmaceutical education. Again, I thank you, and together we will advance pharmacy worldwide. Have a good event.
Thank you so much, Prof. Tofadi, for your opening remarks, and thank you so much to Dr. Catherine Duggan, our CEO, for her encouraging overview as well. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker. It's my great pleasure to introduce Professor Ian Bates. Professor Ian Bates is the director of the FIP Global Pharmaceutical Observatory. Professor Bates holds the chair of pharmacy education at the University College London School of Pharmacy as head of educational development and is a faculty fellow of the Royal Pharmaceutical Society. He is editor-in-chief of Pharmacy Education, an international research journal hosted by FIP, which has been publishing peer-reviewed educational research continuously since 2000. Notably, Prof. Bates is a fellow of the FIP and the Royal Statistical Society, and he is a trustee of the European Pharmaceutical Students Association. Welcome, Prof. Bates, to the webinar. Great to have you with us. And over to you.
Thank you, Dalia. That's very kind of you. My job this afternoon is to provide some context for you, because the Nanjing Statements, the refreshed, rejuvenated Nanjing Statements we're talking about today, are not the only significant intervention that FIP has made since 2016, but also at the same time, a continuation of work which started, I would guess, around 2008 to 2010, when FIP, under the in a partnership with WHO, started to take a much more significant interest in the supply side of the workforce. That's initial education and training, but also continuing a competency development of the workforce in order to meet the emerging healthcare needs that we have with our population demographics and our complexity of service provision that we have. Ozge, could we click on to the slide sets, please? Thank you very much. This is a selection of some of the reports that FIP Education was producing from around 2008. And it was becoming clear around about the mid-teens that we needed to do something much more strategically significant. Interest was exponentially developing, complexity of service provision likewise, and FIP took the bold decision to mount a global consensus symposium in order to start seriously tackling the issues of workforce and education. So this was Nanjing, and the next slide shows us some of the attendees of that conference, which was unusual in the fact that this was a consensus conference. We were bringing together experts from all over the world, officially representing countries and leadership bodies in order to consensus on a series of outcomes. Our stakeholders were also with us, principally WHO, and we had an ambitious agenda set for this particular conference. It's about generating new policy, identifying imperatives for change, and how we can go about making mechanisms and structures in order to facilitate advancement in all areas of our professional activities. And it was truly a significant event. The next slide shows us the three key outcomes of the 2016 Nanjing conference. A vision, which we felt was critical as a hub for developing a journey, a strategic journey. A series of goals associated with workforce and education, and the Nanjing Statements, which is the subject of today's seminar. I'll talk a little bit about the first two, and we have our colleagues on the call today who are going to pick apart and re-engineer the Nanjing Statements that were originally unveiled in Nanjing in 2016. So I won't mention those very much because it's today's topic of conversation. The next slide sort of sets out what we were trying to do. We decided that we did importantly need a vision because that would set the tone and set a direction. Already in 2016, we were looking ahead to 2030, which was a WHO and a United Nations milestone, of course, for the Sustainable Development Goals. So already we were thinking over 10 years ahead about where we wanted to be and how we can transform, because we did recognize the need to transform, and hence we needed that direction of travel. And we thought that developing workforce development goals would be a significant step forward in transformation and advancement for education and training. Moving on to the next slide, this was the vision that we created about how we could be transformative and giving an imperative for developing transformative policy, which I think we have done quite successfully. We have a little way to go yet, but I'll come on to that in just a moment. We needed to articulate what the principles and drivers were for this, And they were centered on healthcare provision, of course, and the increasing complexity of healthcare, the increasing comorbidities of our populations, the increasing reliance on medicines as a therapeutic choice for these long-term conditions and the comorbidities and the complexities of therapeutic intervention. And that's got to be embedded in workforce transformation education. So it was committing to that vision that was fundamental for Nanjing. And there was overwhelming unanimity in that collective commitment. The next slide shows a short excerpt from the vision. And it was a recognition in the vision that actually workforce development is an educational challenge, and that working on a vision which incorporates workforce as an educational process was key for us understanding the way that we're going to be developing. That's the key for transformation, really. So when we talk about workforce development, we are inherently talking about education. And workforce development is a lifelong commitment. It doesn't end with your supply side university years. It continues into early careers. It continues into professional advancement. It continues into seniority of service delivery. So that key recognition, education and workforce being inseparable, was a great step forward, I think. The goals, which I'm picking apart on the next slide, were also key because the goals, the workforce development goals, provided a mechanism. The goals provided a systematic framework within which workforce development can continue. Now, remember, when we talk about workforce development, we're talking about forms of education and development at the same time. So having this recognition that we can systematically plan workforce development was a key strategic policy. So we developed, it took quite a while to develop these, in actual fact, a lot of consultation, a lot of negotiation, a lot of deep thinking across all nations of the world. And they proved to be enormously successful, I think. The statements are our subject for today, but they too were the third leg of this Nanjing set of outcomes. The next slide tells us where we were heading with the Nanjing statements. If you could move on for me one slide. There we go. And this is going to be what we're refreshing today, and what you will be participating in. The whole report from Nanjing containing those three key elements is available, and there's a link for you there if you'd like to read all about the methodologies and all about the consensus that we reached. WHO were there, of course, and they were both participating and observing how we went about this key development in 2016. There you can see Jim Campbell in the center of that photograph, who is still head of WHO Human Resources for Health, works across all the healthcare professions, and is a key partner with FIP to this day. And in fact, next year at the World Health Assembly, there are going to be some further key announcements made about the partnership that FIP has forged with WHO and how we are advancing globally the pivotal and primary role of pharmacy and pharmacists in global healthcare provision. We have never been closer to WHO than we are right now. And in the run-up to 2030, you can expect more key developments and even closer working relationship with pharmacy at the pinnacle, at the very driving edge of healthcare provision. What happened after Nanjing? Well, here are some copies of slides that we showed to many, many stakeholders, to many forums, and in many conferences, and in many meetings following Nanjing about how we were going to use the Nanjing outcomes for advocacy, needs assessment, strategic planning. Click again, please, Ozge, for me. We developed a way of trying to integrate these workforce policies into general provision, service provision, making sure that we were fully supporting our pharmacists, our pharmacy technicians, and our scientists on the ground with these. These have got to be practical things. They can't just be esoteric policy. They have to have a meaning and a pragmatism for our pharmaceutical constituencies. And finally, we came up with some very broad plans about how we were going to take things forward from 2016 onwards. And this was, I remember writing this slide and showing it to people, and they were saying, that looks great, but what exactly are you going to be doing for the next few years to get these things on the ground, up and running, useful and valid for our constituencies? Well, let me just pick apart on the next slide a few of the key initiatives that have happened since 2016 and which have enabled enactment of the goals and the Nanjing statements. The goals we actually moved forward with more. We went on to dropping the word workforce and just having them as professional development goals. And now we have 21 of them now. We haven't lost workforce in these 21 goals, but we have extended the scope of practice and science and how we want to advance practice and science in the context of workforce from there on. So we have 21, and pleasingly, we launched these 21 goals in 2021, and they now form a cornerstone of FIP policy making. We created a hub in 2018, I think, which was an engine room for progress, an engine room for development, covering all of these 21 goals, which were in development by then, and a reactivation of the Global Pharmaceutical Observatory to collect data, to monitor progress, and to reflect that progress back to our constituencies. And more recently, we have the Brisbane Calls for Action, which were consensed and developed and launched last year in the final run-up towards 2030, making sure that we have, again, engagement with activity on the ground about transformation of the pharmaceutical workforce. I've got 2 slides left. The next one shows how those original workforce development goals from Nanjing have been transmuted into 21 development goals for the entire profession, looking at workforce, practice, and science. A huge achievement and a great success, but not over yet. A work in progress, and a work in progress which will continue into the foreseeable future. And has anything come out of all of this? Well, the next slide shows us some very, if you like, aggregated output metrics that we've been charting. We've been charting this actually since 2012, but you can see from 2017 onwards, particularly the workforce skills and competencies, the pharmacy education and training programs linked with Nanjing have been accelerating year on year in terms of outputs. So we know this is not a static thing. It's not a status quo thing. It's an advancement. It's a progression. It's a continued development. And I'm, for one, as being part of this huge team, FIP team, linked with, all of our 140 countries who are part of this effort, feel particularly pleased about how Nanjing was a real starting point, a real crystallization, and a real starting gun, if you like, for setting off this massive global transformation project. So I'm going to hand over to my colleagues now to focus on the main event today, which is how we are revising and have revised Nanjing Statements from 2016 in this final push, if you like, towards 2030 for our transformation projects. Thank you very much for letting me say those words.
Thank you so much, Professor Ian Bates, for joining us, for your participation, and really providing us that wonderful overview of the history of the Nanjing Statements and the achievements since their original launch and where we will go next. Thanks a million for being with us today. Colleagues, it gives me more great pleasure to introduce our next speaker for today, Professor Ralph Altier. Professor Ralph Altier is Professor and Dean at the University of Colorado Skaggs School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences in the United States. His research and education career spans over 40 years. As Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, he had led conversion of the Bachelor of Pharmacy program to the PharmD program and had administrative oversight of an innovative online post-Bachelor of Pharmacy PharmD program for the North America and another for the rest of the world. He has held leadership roles in FIP from 2011 to 2024, including as chairperson of FIP Education, member of the FIP Executive Committee, Bureau, and Council, as well as taking part in the Congress Program Development Committee and the AIM Advisory Committee. He is the director of the FIP UNESCO Unitwin Global Program and previously president of the Academic Pharmacy section. He has conducted outreach efforts on behalf of FIP Education to academic pharmacy associations in the United States, Asia, Europe, Latin America, and Africa. In 2016, he was awarded FIP Fellow, and in 2024, he was the first recipient of the FIP Exceptional Leadership Award. Welcome, Professor Altier, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today as the co-chair for the advisory group on Nanjing Statements revision. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Dalia, and welcome to everyone on this webinar today. Thank you for joining us as we launch these updated Nanjing Statements guidance document. I want to take a look back at, again, 2016, as Professor Bates just provided to us. And I just paraphrased and gave the short version of that global vision for global pharmaceutical workforce. So the global vision we all share is accepting responsibility as pharmacists and pharmaceutical scientists for the development and sustainability of an adaptable and capable global workforce working in partnership for better health through transformative and continuous education. That, as so aptly described by Professor Bates, was true in 2016. It is true today, and it will be true as we move into the future. So in my mind, it was worth repeating this because this is what drives us forward. This vision is what we need to really keep in mind as we move forward to advance pharmacy education and health outcomes. So in 2024, with these updated statements, this was added to the vision statement. This vision empowers professional leaders, educators, regional stakeholders, government education and health ministries, and regulators in developing national or regional visions that align with their specific needs. This is needs-based education, priorities, and resources. to enable pharmacists and pharmaceutical scientists to perform at the highest standards in order to advance the pharmacy profession and improve individual and community health outcomes. And this idea of improving health outcomes is really the ultimate goal that we are trying to achieve. Again, starting with the education process, lifelong learning, and advocacy for the profession, and improving health for all. So as another major update in our vision for these updated statements. So in that domain one, there are a number of action items in there. And I think this was mentioned before, where we put action verbs here so that we can assess how we're doing along the way of reaching our vision goals. So I'll run through these very quickly. This is not a comprehensive list by any stretch of the imagination, but these are major elements that we share as a vision for what our future should be focused on to develop a competent, professional pharmacy workforce globally. So engage in workforce strategic planning from the local level to the global level to meet the needs of the healthcare system and society. This is just an essential element of what we need to be doing continuously. A commitment to quality assured education and training. Make sure it's the highest quality we could provide. Support advocacy and collaboration of all constituents. And those were just mentioned, for example, in that 2024 addition to the vision, to advance the profession. This, I cannot possibly overstate the importance of this advocacy. And this is something that we need to do every day, continuously, and we will need to do so that pharmacy practice does help to provide that improved health outcomes that we all strive for. Foster a culture of wellness for students, staff, and faculty. This is an increasingly important aspect of our responsibilities. Incorporate principles of equity, diversity, and inclusion in all aspects of education, research, and patient care. We have to be cognizant of the patients that we are caring for and respecting them as individuals, no matter what their background is. Develop competencies and professional values, ethics, knowledge, skills, attitudes, and behaviors. This is essentially instilling professionalism in our students and in our workforce. Ensure current and future trends in developing curricula. We always have to be looking forward as to what it should be as opposed to what it is today. Emphasize that pharmacists are patient advocates and care providers, taking personal responsibility for the health of our patients. Advance health outcomes through research and applying evidence. Very important for evidence-based practice. Engaged in scholarly activities, not only by academics, but all pharmacists can participate in this process through their areas of expertise that they've gained the mastery of over the course of their careers. Be pharmacist champions for good health and wellness promotion, preventive medicine, and public health. Promoting health, well-being, and public health measures really to help also improve our health outcomes. It's becoming more and more important, I think, as we move forward in the world today. And advocate for the advancement of the professional workforce capacity, both locally, nationally, regionally, globally. Advocacy is critical and it's never ending, as I mentioned before. The initial one I mentioned in 1.3 is really advocacy for the profession as a whole. This is advocacy for support of the educational programs that we need to have to continuously advance our professional workforce. So each one of these areas and others will be detailed to you by our upcoming speakers. Lastly, I just want to mention how these statements can and have been used. This is from the time when I was director of the UniTwin program in Sub-Saharan Africa, and this is just one example from my experience with using them. I was fortunate to be doing this at the time of the conference and when the initial statements came out and the global vision came out. And I have referred to this as a watershed moment that Professor Bates, I think, so aptly described for us. It was really important for moving us forward. So this served as an important framework and a guide for self-assessment of curricula by members of the Center for Excellence in Sub-Saharan Africa. And that was coupled with other FIP resources such as the Global Competency Framework and others. But really, it was instrumental in identifying gaps in the curricula. This re-energized everybody to go through that assessment process and say, here's what we really want to achieve going forward. So there were many of these statements that were common across all of the individuals involved in the Center for Excellence. And we were able to utilize those, see what the commonalities were, distill them down into what we did was our top 3 to pursue to advance their curricula. So we took the statements, we took the vision, we took the workforce development goals, and we made them actionable. And I think that's a key use of the original statements, and I think, as you'll see, the statements that have been updated. So for that, I thank you for your attention and turn the program over to our other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Altier. You have initiated the unpacking or the unveiling of the Nanjing Statements 2024 with Domain 1. Thanks for that. And we will now proceed with our next speaker to unveil the next domain, Domain 2. I'd like to welcome Professor Pascal Salame, who is a professor of epidemiology and is the director of Inspect LB in Lebanon, which is an autonomous research institute based in Lebanon. Professor Salame, proficient in pharmaceutical research direction and education quality with extensive expertise in research methods and advanced statistics. Her portfolio comprises 665 publications to date in clinical pharmacy, higher education, epidemiology, and public health. She is the former dean of the Faculty of Pharmacy at the Lebanese University and the former associate dean for academic affairs at the School of Pharmacy at LAU, which is the Lebanese American University. She has also been the chair of the scientific committee at the Lebanese Order of Pharmacists, OPL, for many years. She's committed to advancing pharmacy through managing pharmaceutical practices, education, and research projects. Welcome, Professor Salame, who's also a member of the Update on Nanjing Statements Committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Dalia, for the presentation. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, FIP, for giving me the honor to really take a small part of this very important declaration that we're having. So I will be doing the overview of Domain 2, which is about the students' admission process. Next slide, please. So as you know, the Nanjing Statement includes several domains, and the student admission process is the first, let's say, practical domain that will tell us about the best practice in this field. Next slide, please. Okay, so here I have some highlights of the students' admission process, and these highlights are really of most important to be taken and to be applied in every context, in every region, and at every level. So first, to describe this process, recruiting students who have a profile that fits the requirements, and here this is a very important thing. We have some requirements. When we say an admission process that is open, that is really inclusive, it doesn't mean that there are no requirements. There are requirements. These are scientific requirements, and the process has to fit these requirements, and they also you also have to take into account whatever is desired at the level of the country. So this is a global state. This is a global a process we are talking about. However, applying it at every country level is of utmost importance, because if there is no real tailoring of every principle to the context, well, it will not really work. So educational institution should prioritize producing a graduate body that represents the population they will serve. This is a very important thing. As we said, we should apply, we should tailor, we should take into account the culture based in which these pharmacists will be working. We should take into account the community that will be served by the pharmacist within the community pharmacy. So based on that, there are 4 important points to be taken into account. The first one, as we said, requirements. And what do we mean by requirements? We mean good academic performance. We have to have pharmacists who are good at what they do. We have to have pharmacists who demonstrate excellent academic performance, but it's not enough. They should also have good social and interpersonal skills. And this is a second pillar, let's say, among the competencies that are required for a good pharmacist. The second point that is important is that admission policies and practices, well, they have to take into account all these aspects we are talking about. So we'll have to have a diverse student body. We'll have to have many characteristics related to the population that will be served, as we said. We will have to take into account the market specificities and the particular needs. Here again, we're talking about specificities. Here again, we're talking about the different needs of developing countries, low-income countries, high-income countries, and the different types of communities, the diversity of the communities that is being served. Some contexts are more complex than others, and some contexts need to be really taken into account in a different way than simpler context. So previously, there was a FIP toolkit that would address inequity in pharmaceutical education. So this FIP toolkit is a very important tool because it will help us in addressing inequity. It will help us in really ensuring that the student body that is being admitted, they have all the diversity that is needed and the inclusivity that is needed. And when we say diversity and inclusivity, of course, we mean all aspects, whether we're talking social, whether we're talking mental, whether we're talking sexual minorities, whether we're talking religious, cultural, all these, they have to be somehow represented among the students' body. And number 4, pharmacy programs should include multiple strategies that ensure and extend student enrollment. And here also the directors and the deans can have access to a handbook that was published by the FIP about strategies that improve enrollments in schools of pharmacy. Of course, I don't want to go deeper into the details of that aspect, but you know that pharmacy is a profession that in some contexts is suffering. Sometimes we have a decrease in the number of people who would like to enroll in this profession. And sometimes we need to take quality into account, and we don't always find the quality of people that is needed. So we need strategy to address all the weaknesses at that level, and we need plans in order to really improve enrollment in these schools of pharmacy. Next slide, please. So finally, I would like to end by giving you an example of the institution where I was a dean and where I still teach until today. So it's the Lebanese University Faculty of Pharmacy. And I would like just to tell you how we address all the principles that we were talking about. For fairness and equity, well, first, the entrance examination is corrected blindly, and normally we select the best based on academic perspectives. So this is the baseline. Then the moral dimension is also taken into account because the examination includes an essay that is related to a philosophical or a moral topic, and this will help us also to select the students who have the best moral dimension, let's say. Third, we have representativeness and inclusivity because at the Lebanese University, which is the public university, we accept candidates from all Lebanese regions, of course, and we also include transfers from other university whenever it's necessary. And we also have special procedures for candidates with special needs. And finally, for the interpersonal skills, well, of course, this has to be taken into account. However, it's not at the level of the admission. It is taught later in the curriculum. It is part of the competencies framework that is adopted by the faculty and that is being taught within the different courses. So thank you, FIP. Thank you everyone for listening. And here are some pictures of our students. Thank you.
Lovely presentation. Thanks for that, Prof. Salama. And we will now move on to unveil the next domain, domain 3. And we will do that with our colleague, Anisha Sanju, who is a registered pharmacist in Australia and New Zealand and worked in patient-facing roles in community and hospital settings before joining academia in early 2018. Her teaching focus was in interprofessional education and professional practice. Anisha is a digitally savvy educator who has been awarded with multiple commendations for teaching excellence. She is a global young leader in pharmacy and has published in reputable journals, while also actively contributing to the FIP activities since 2020. She is currently pursuing her PhD in collaborative practice with the University of Melbourne, having been awarded the Walter Winston Johnson Scholarship in 2024. Welcome, Anisha. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dalia. Thanks for the lovely introduction. Thank you for the opportunity to present Domain 3, Foundation Education, and thank you to everyone who's contributed to this wonderful piece of work. So I will give a very brief description of Domain 3, as well as a brief overview of this domain. So essentially, this domain focuses on the foundational education, so the initial stage and process of education for our pharmacy and pharmaceutical science learners. And what we're prioritizing in this domain is the foundational knowledge and skills that are necessary to obtain a degree and to pursue a career in pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences. So as Prof. Toyin had said earlier in this webinar, we've got a wonderful list of appendices nowadays in the FIP Nanjing Statements, where we have a lot of different areas that you can consider in order to review, consolidate your curriculums. And some of the potential areas that I've listed here to consider are firstly to think about, more engaging different experiences for our students to look at collaborative work that they could potentially carry out with other health disciplines, other health professionals. So this could include thinking about ways that we want to sort of initiate interprofessional education in the initial stages of the degree and to think about ways we want to scaffold it throughout the curriculum. There's a lot of great work that's going on about artificial intelligence nowadays in pharmacy and pharmaceutical education. And so there's a lot of work on Gen AI and assessment and learning experiences. And these are things that you can also consider for your institutions. we would want to really incorporate more ethical decision making so we can really increase the skills in ethical decision making for our students, as well as really emphasize that they should embrace lifelong learning as a core value in the pharmaceutical profession. So on to the next slide for highlights on domain 3 in foundation education. So this domain starts with an acknowledgement that pharmacists and pharmaceutical scientists will share a common scientific foundation, despite the fact that there are different educational approaches or differing learning objectives in how we teach both pharmacy and pharmaceutical science. We highly encourage that curriculum should focus on optimizing care. So we want to look at medicines optimization, at really patient safety being the key focus, at ways that we can deal with our diverse and unique health needs and health systems. We also want curriculums to have a focus on public health, digital health technology, such as AI and informatics, as well as covering broadly the core sciences in biological, social, and pharmaceutical sciences. We acknowledge that in order to sort of future-proof our pharmacy workforce, we really need to prioritize the development of essential skills. As mentioned by Prof. Salame, interpersonal communication being very important, looking at collaboration. So as mentioned earlier, interprofessional education, looking at ways to kind of give our students chances to collaborate effectively, not just within the pharmacy profession, but also amongst other health disciplines, trying to incorporate a greater sense of self-awareness and self-regulation within our pharmacy students, increasing their level to think ethically, to conduct themselves more professionally, to have increased skills in strategic and critical thinking, to develop a sense of leadership, and also to increase their ability to adapt and to develop core skills and resilience. And we feel that these are ways that will help them navigate the increasingly complex healthcare world that we face today. On to the next slide. In this next slide, these are some final statements that are available on domain 3. One being that we would also encourage that we ensure assessment of direct patient care competency throughout the education process. So we would probably need to think about introducing performance-based assessments, simulation assessments from early start of the degree that they undergo in pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences. Also looking at incorporating more experiential learning in diverse settings, be it industry, pharmacy, community pharmacy, hospital, in the early stages of the curriculum, because it will be beneficial to the students, not only in them gaining more experience, but also in helping them to form their professional identity, as well as in fostering independent and self-directed lifelong learning to ensure that our future pharmacy workforce embraces ongoing career and professional development post-graduation. And to end, the presentation in this domain, if you're looking for further support, we highly encourage that you explore the FIP Global Competency Framework as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anita, for being with us today. And we are going to speedily move on to unveil domain 4. And Professor Yahya Shunura is going to support us with this segment. Professor Shunura is an internationally recognized as an outstanding global pharmaceutical scientist working at the forefront of producing life-saving medicines. He is a South African research chair for the Development of Science and Innovation, DSI, administered by the National Research Foundation, NRF. Prof. Shunura co-founded the WITS Advanced Drug Delivery Platform, a flagship research unit and Africa's only fully integrated platform in its domain, focused on designing nanomedicine, advanced drug delivery systems, functional biomaterials, and regenerative medicines. He has published over 367 papers in the field, mentored and trained over 100 graduates, and is an inventor on 28 internationally granted patents in the pharmaceutical sciences. Welcome, Yahya, and the microphone is yours.
Thank you, colleagues. Colleagues, I'm going to be presenting you the overview of domain 4, which deals with professional competencies. In the interest of time, I will just highlight a few of them. There are 17 different activities under this domain of professional competencies. To start off with the description, so we are saying that, pharmacists, pharmaceutical scientists, educators, we need to acquire the knowledge, skills, and attitudes that make them or us competent to meet the public's healthcare needs, also for scientific development and other healthcare professionals. How do we integrate and collaborate with them? I think this is the triangle that we're trying to, synthesize, assimilate within this domain. Becoming a public health need care person, developing science and making the products available for the public health or the public healthcare system, and also to integrate with other people who are involved in offering or delivering public health care. And what are the knowledge, skills, and behaviors for this? Next slide. So, in the first activity here, we look at developing a well-rounded professional. And what does it mean? If we look at these 20 different, knowledge, skills, and attitudes and behaviors that we expect from graduates who are in pharmacy programs around the world. And clearly, all these 20 cannot be taught from textbooks, neither can it be taught only in the classroom. So we'll have to think out of the box to actually make programs that are strategic to drive these kind of competencies, knowledge, skills, and attitudes that graduates need to have. And for these, you need programs that actually take the classroom into the workspace. And as Professor Bates mentioned earlier, the whole idea is to bring education and the workforce together and integrate it, because we need people who are lifelong learners, and you're going to be spending more time in the workspace than in the universities. So you need to have these skills that will drag you along your journey as a professional pharmacist for long, in the long term. So at our university, we have these kind of programs that we put together. For example, the INVEST program. INVEST is an acronym. It's got nothing to do with money, but an acronym in terms of, how do we inculcate a growth mindset in students, networking, vision, entrepreneurship. How do you get them to think entrepreneurially? How do you unlock the value of the pharmacy degree? So you're basically taking the classroom into the workspace, and you're also bringing the boardrooms into the classrooms. And these three programs, Pharma Apprentice, obviously, as the name implies, it's going to do with entrepreneurial thinking within the pharmacy degree. And how do we make them think in terms of becoming an employer rather than employee mindset in certain countries that may require that, where the pharmacy degree has a broader value than just dispensing medication. The STEPS program is a program which is a screening and a testing program for pharmacy students. We give them an interface with patients very early on, obviously within a controlled environment, but this helps them to develop some of these 20 skills that we talk about to become a well-rounded professional. So essentially taking the classroom to the boardroom and bringing the boardrooms into the classrooms. Next slide. So here's another list of domains, and I encourage everybody to read these domains in much more detail. For the interest of time, I'm just going to highlight a few things. 4.2 talks about balance. How do we balance the science and the practice? Because we need to have research-led teaching and research with impact. So teaching only from textbook has its place, but also if you can merge the research with the science with the practice, it allows us to be a better quality of graduate. Because what is a diagnosis and a prescription without any products or tools to actually treat? So the science has to be merged with the practice so that we get the balanced graduate. Curriculum content should be designed to take into consideration, the outcomes, a mix of topics. How do we have course integration at all levels? So students see the relevance between why they're doing pharmacology, why they're doing pharmaceutics, why they're doing pharmacy practice. How do we bring all this together, especially at a practical level? For example, during laboratory practical sessions, you give them a prescription, they interpret the prescription, and then make the formulation, then test the formulation. So they're getting the entire integrate and mix of topics and building the competencies that are required for a well-rounded or balanced graduate. There's also issue in this 4.4, 4.5, 4.6 talks about curriculum, talks about patient care. There's some links to domain 3 as well that Anisha had just covered earlier. And then 4.7, we talk about ethical principles and ethical decision making. This is obviously a central component of being a healthcare professional. Professional conduct should be explicitly embedded in education and training. This is also a competency in the scientific and in clinical practice. So the examples here, in our institution, we have a specific course called the Health System Sciences, where students are taught, all the ethical principles, and not from just one perspective, but from the perspective of governments, stakeholders, pharmaceutical companies, the healthcare professional system. All of that comes together in this course. And this course is part of the curriculum that allows for, biomedical ethics and everything that's got to do with ethical practice and professional conduct. Next slide. Here's a few more domains or activities, activities under domain 4, which talks about interprofessional education. Again, how do we create common learning spaces between various degree codes so that we can have the interprofessional education and collaboration from very early on? So how do our pharmacists interact with the doctors, with the OT, occupational therapists, the physiotherapists, the nurses? How do we all come together, at the patient bedside or during ward rounds so that we can have interprofessional education from the beginning? So when they go out in practice, they actually actually familiar with each other's scope of practice and how to interact and actually become a much more high quality healthcare professional. We have a few facilities at our institution called the Trinity Healthcare Facility, which brings all these professionals together and interacting in terms of how each of them scope is being practiced in terms of education as well as implementation. 4.9 talks about, you know, the experiential learning and training. This is again taking the classrooms into the boardrooms, or you know, moving learning away from the classroom, workplace-based learning. You know, not only to industry, not only to retail and public hospitals, but also to regulatory authorities. The entire value chain of the pharmaceutical value chain from end to end. You know, exposing students so they can have a full experiential training of the various sectors and the various things that's required to have a well-rounded pharmacist as part of domain 4. Clinical 4.10 talks about, you know, clinical spaces and the use of simulation. It's a given fact that not every institution will have access to all different sectors of pharmacy, and that's where simulation comes in as a tool, you know, to create maybe a mock pharmacy, to create a simulation that it can be used, virtual reality software. All of these can be embedded within the curriculum as part of curriculum innovation. 4.11 talks about integrated practical sessions. I already mentioned this, I'm not going to go on, but it's about, you know, how do we bring the pharmacology, the pharmacy practice, chemistry, Sutics, all into one practical, so that you can, a student gets a full picture of how to practice as a well-rounded pharmacist. Next slide. And lastly, the 4.14 to 4.17, you know, 4.14 specifically talks about the continual professional development, or what we term as CPD and specialization. How do we provide access to students to understanding that if you, with the pharmacy degree, you're going to have to undergo lifelong learning. There's CPD needs to happen beyond, you know, the university walls. It's in your practice. How do we do all of this? So this is where we bring the associations. For example, the PSSA is a Pharmaceutical Society of South Africa. SAPI is the South African Association of Pharmacists in Industry. Bringing all of these associations together and have learning activities jointly with them, with the students. So, you know, it could be short courses, could be, you know, primary healthcare, clinical training, oncology, admixing, vaccination. All of these things that are CPD related can all be brought together so that students get the message that this is a lifelong, you know, it's a formal qualification, but there's a lot of self-learning that needs to happen beyond the university space. 4.16, again, workforce expectations, going back to Professor Bates' opening remarks. How do we merge education with the workforce? You know, the workforce is very demanding. You always have the criticism that universities are not preparing students enough, you know, but what can we do to ensure? So the best way is to let the workforce be part of the curriculum design, understanding what is their needs, a needs-based education, and link the work-based learning to the curriculum. And lastly, you know, all levels of education and training for the pharmaceutical workforce should include review and reference of the regulatory requirements of practice. It's a very regulated space that we're all involved in. Pharmacy is a very regulated profession. If you're not engaging with the regulator early on, it also brings a bit of ethics to students, because you need to understand all the products that you are going to be manufacturing, all that you're going to be dispensing. All of these are regulated, and that needs to be, you know, hand in hand with the regulatory authority, also part of curriculum development. Thank you, colleagues. That's all for me.
Thank you so much for that, Professor Chunara. And to unveil domain 5, we have with us Dr. Chen, who is the Vice President of the Western Pacific region for the FIP Hospital Pharmacy section. Dr. Chen is an assistant professor of pharmacy at the School of Pharmacy, China Medical University Hospital, Taiwan, and division director for Clinical Pharmacy Department of Pharmacy, China Medical University Hospital in Taiwan. Dr. Chen has a PhD in social and admin pharmacy, and we are delighted to have you with us. Dr. Chen, the floor is yours to unveil domain 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Dalia. It is 10 p.m. In Taiwan, so good evening, everyone. I'm Jack Chen. It's my pleasure to give a brief overview to identify key updates within Domain 5. Experiential education is where students develop pharmacy practice and science competencies in a variety of real-life settings. So not only skills as described in original statement, but knowledge, attitude, and prior experiences should be blended together to develop a competency-based pharmacy practice experience. Of course, a reliable tool such as EPAs, is essential to assess interns' desired outcomes. You may also refer to Appendix B later. There are 79 items of terms and subject areas for consideration. Next slide. Statement 5.1 is related to direct patient care in hospital and community settings. 5.3 is the collaboration and teamwork in the statements. Also, medicine regulation and the global levels are newly mentioned here. Statement 5.5 is related to participation in internships, rotations, and clerkships within appropriate mentoring, guidance, and reflective learning. Next slide. 5.7 is a new statement. Additional settings such as pharmaceutical policy, administration, quality assurance, regulatory, NGOs, etc. should be considered as appropriate environments for experiential education. 5.9 has expanded the statement to include professional ethics, confidentiality, data protection, storage, data sharing, data sovereignty, and privacy policies governing research and practice. 5.10 states that preceptors, students, consumers, and health professionals should be provided with opportunities to contribute to curricular decision-making activities. 5.11 is also a new statement that students should have the opportunity to train in a research settings. Through research, students will learn innovating, planning, and scientific reasoning. Statement 5.12 emphasizes that students should have the opportunity and the confidence to promote advancing practice in training sites, reflecting the description mentioned in the beginning that students develop their pharmacy practice and science competencies in real-life setting. Next slide. To introduce how we could incorporate the Nanjing statements in our respective areas, I would like to use statement 5.7 as example. In many regions, including Western Pacific, the pharmacy education has adopted 6-year program. This comprehensive PharmD program integrates clinical, research, and industry aspects, blending pharmaceutical sciences with clinical pharmacy to provide students with extensive practical experience. Beyond in-depth hospital pharmacy internships, this program has expanded to offer a wider variety of internship locations. This allows 6-year program students to choose fields aligned with their interests, laying a solid foundation for future career development. Since students have flexible choices, allowing exposure to various potential career paths, including teaching, academic research, herbal medicine, pharmaceutical administration, pharmaceutical manufacturing, academic, R&D, quality assurance, drug companies, and pharmaceutical marketing. These comprehensive exposures foster students' talents and enable them to realize the diverse roles of pharmacy professionals in contemporary society. That's all my presentations. Thank you for your attention.
Dr. Chen, thank you so much for being with us and giving us Domain 5 overview. And I would like now to welcome our next presenter to unveil Domain 6, our dear Dr. Wanda Maldonado Davila, who serves as the Dean and Professor at the University of Puerto Rico School of Pharmacy. Her research interests in academia include the development of professional and general abilities in pharmacy students and curriculum development, as well as clinical and therapeutic application of anti-infective agents. Dr. Maldonado has served the American Association of Colleges of Pharmacy in multiple capacities, including multiple committees, task forces, and special interest groups. She has recently served as the chair of the Council of Deans and as an AACP's Board of Directors member. In her country, she has advocated for legislation that fosters the advancement of the pharmacy profession, including immunization by pharmacists. Actually, the government of Puerto Rico has appointed her in the COVID-19 Medical Task Force in 2020. And she has collaborated actively with several pharmacy education international initiatives in the Americas region, the Pan American Health Organization, and the International Pharmaceutical Federation, which is FIP. Welcome to the floor, Dr. Davila. Can you hear me, Wanda?
Sorry, yes.
Welcome.
Yeah. Okay, so thanks FIP for inviting me to participate in this working group, which has been a very enlightening experience, having collaborated with colleagues from all the corners of the globe with such a good perspective on pharmacy education. So domain 6 is really the domain that keeps me up at night. Pharmacy administrators, we think about resources all the time, what we need to provide to our programs, to our faculty, to our students. And I think that domain 6 captures the essence of what we need to be looking for in order for our programs to be successful. So the general description is resources and academic staff refer to physical and technological infrastructure, specialized equipment, financial and human resources that are needed to properly prepare pharmacists and pharmaceutical sciences. In the interest of time, please take me to my very last slide, and then maybe I can come back to the statements per se. So 3 more slides. There we go. So certainly when we talk about all these resources, all of them play a role in the success of our programs, of our academic programs, including the physical infrastructure. We need a learning environment that foster good conditions for our learners, for our faculty, for our staff. The technological infrastructure, as we need in this day and age to have the infrastructure to manipulate digital data, to provide students with digital textbooks, platforms for exams, institutional platforms for assessment. We also need specialized equipment for our practice labs, for the science labs, all those with the purpose of providing with the best activities for the students to incorporate theory and practice in the way of a practice lab or in the way of a science lab. So certainly the equipment, the technological infrastructure, the physical infrastructure, they all play a role on how our learning environment fosters our students' development as future pharmacists. And certainly when we look at the human resources, we have to think of our faculty, staff, learners, preceptors, who in many of our programs really do voluntary work for us to deliver a big portion of our curricula. So certainly for the human resources part, the academic staff, we have to think of ways to how do we attract faculty that is prepared, qualified? How do we retain them? How do we provide incentives for them? How do we provide for professional development? How do we reward the faculty for their performance and their achievements? And obviously, when we come to financial resources, certainly I don't think, I cannot think of many people who think that have enough resources for their program. Some of us have less, some of you have more, but we all have to make sure that those financial resources are utilized or allocated in a way that will foster the outcomes of the program. So having said that, I think an idea that we could talk about how to allocate financial resources is going back to our strategic goals and our strategic plans, and making sure that when we allocate resources, we do it in a way that we are supporting those strategic goals, and therefore we are contributing to the physical infrastructure, technological infrastructure, specialized equipment, human resources. And having said that, we have to be very mindful that financial resources are allocated when we have the discussions with the faculty, with the learners, or where our needs are. How do we do assessment of the curriculum? How do we make decisions that are based on evidence in terms of how do we assess the curriculum? How do we use the technological resources to assess the effectiveness of our programs? And that's my 5 minutes of fame. Time myself. So you can look at the statements in the document, but basically what it goes into those basic aspects that I just mentioned. Thank you.
Thanks a million for sticking to this time, and we are speedily walking through the domains with our audience. And now it gives me great pleasure to be supported by Professor Lilian Azopardi, who will unveil domain number 7. Professor Azopardi is the chair of the academic institutional membership within FIP. She is also the head of the Department of Pharmacy and Deputy Dean of the Faculty of Medicine and Surgery at the University of Malta. She has extensive experience as a pharmacist in hospital community and quality assurance departments in the pharmaceutical manufacturing industry. She has championed innovative models of teaching and learning, including experiential learning and interprofessional education experiences in a variety of settings at undergraduate and postgraduate levels. Welcome, Lilian, and the microphone is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Dalia, and good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, everyone. It gives me great pleasure to be with you today to share the work that has been done over the past few months, building on what we started and which I was also part of in 2016 as the first Nanjing edition. And as always, something that keeps growing and evolving means that it does have value for us as educators. Moving specifically to the quality assurance and assessment domain, I do believe that we are all very much aware that there are diversity in how we approach quality assurance and assessment in our institutions. There are structures within FIP, there are other tools within FIP, which I would also like to highlight here, that approach the quality assurance aspects in the profession, but also specifically in education, which were looked at also when one is looking at this new version of the Nanjing Statements. But what I would like to highlight here as a take-home message from this very, very in-depth exposure to the Nanjing updates is the ethos of this domain. And in fact, those are the green words which I highlighted in the slide, that in this quality assurance and assessment domain, what is key is that in education, we are always looking at opportunities for evolvement and improvements, especially because we need to ensure that what we're teaching in pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences is relevant for the future and ensures the sustainable performance and suitable competencies of the future workforce. And this very nicely encapsulates what you will find in the quality assurance domain. In the next slide, I have tried to map rather than put the different statements, which are very interesting to look at and which I invite you to refer to in this domain. But I mapped out what we had and what the update actually did. So the boxes in the light color are the ones which are the pillars of the quality assurance and assessment domain in the Nanjing Statements. Quality improvement, of course, that we need to have metrics to follow what quality is and what quality improvements are required. We need to have also systems that ensure and promote curricular review, and we need to also understand what competencies we want to have that we are trying to measure quality for. Now, what is interesting in this exercise that FIP is launching today is that these pillars have been strengthened through the work that has been undergone during this review exercise by the large panel of people, and the exercise that was undertaken was that these were strengthened through the 3 boxes on the side, the bold boxes on the side, that in addition to the 4 domains, the 4 aspects in this domain, we are now looking at to have these aspects, we need to have strategic planning and implementation. We need to liaise and have a good structure of competencies, so the competency frameworks, and there's also an underlining on the importance of peer evaluation at all levels, be it for students, be it for faculty, being it for the institution itself. And that also, of course, ties in with the global experience and the global ethos that is provided within by being part of an FIP, by the institution being part of the FIP AIM group and the FIP family. So in the last slide, I have also drawn on how the Nanjing statements have helped me individually in my institution, and also how they have helped the region and how they have impacted on the region as a reflection of how I expect that the newly updated Nanjing statements can help us move forward also at our micro and macro levels in the regions of the different regions of the globe. So with the Nanjing statements, this spurred the development in the European Association of Faculties of Pharmacy, which is an observer member organization of FIP, and through the collaboration with FIP within EAFP, we did develop a position paper that captured major aspects in the Nanjing statements that were seen to be key aspects to be put at the forefront for our stakeholders in pharmacy, to be aware what we want to achieve in all different institutions at pharmacy education level in Europe. Moving more towards the individual experience with the Nanjing statements, I have seen that with the Nanjing statements and then at the European level with the developed framework underlying this Nanjing statements, they are helpful as a gap-finding tool to improve and explore opportunities in our systems, how we can evolve better what we are already currently doing. So they serve as a gap-finding tool to look into how to change the way what we're doing to make the education provide more relevant workforce for the healthcare systems, which are especially in the context that they are continuously evolving and transforming. So even in this domain of quality assurance, I have learned that these opportunity finding helped us in, for example, going through our peer review and accreditation system in my university very successfully last year. So thank you again for being part of this global community, and I look forward to the updates in place.
Thanks a million, Professor Azzopardi, for your wonderful recap on Domain 7. And I just want to let everybody to know that we have about 220 participants on this call. So thank you all for being with us and engaging with us in the chat box. We have a couple of poll questions for you to close off the session. But yes, fantastic turnout from all of you. Thanks a million. And now it gives me great pleasure to be supported by Dr. Nadia Al-Mazroui to unveil the last domain of the Nanjing Statements, Domain 8. And Professor Nadia Al-Mazroui serves as an associate professor at the University of Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates. She is also the chairman of the Experiential Training Committee at the university. And Professor Al-Mazroui is the president of the Eastern Mediterranean Regional Forum. She is definitely an active leader within FIP, contributing to multiple committees, working on pharmaceutical education advancement, emergency management, and the Nanjing Statements recent update. Welcome, Dr. Nadia. The floor is yours. Dr. Nadia, can you hear me? Yeah, we see you now. Perfect. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dalia, for your introduction. And I'm going to give you an overview about a brief overview about the last domain, which is domain 8, which is the research, which is the important domain in the education journey that we can use this research to evaluate, assess the education, the teaching methods in the education journey, and also we can use it also to for the community. For community projects and for helping the community advancement as a project supporting the community. And also we encourage the students to involve in the research. So if we are going to talk about integrating research to meet our evolving healthcare needs, we see in an era marked by rapid advancement in healthcare, the pharmacy profession stands at the threshold of significant change. The recent release of this FIP Nanjing Statements Guide documents to 2023 offers a forward-looking framework aimed to reshaping pharmacy education to meet evolving healthcare demand. A critical component of this strategy is the integration of pharmaceutical research into the education curricula. This approach not only equips students with the analytical skills required to drive innovations, but also fosters a culture inquiry that positions pharmacy profession as a key contributors to global health advancement. By identification opportunities for research advancement and embedding these into education, we can cultivate a generation of pharmacists, scientists who are better prepared to address complex healthcare needs. Here we are going to speak about the descriptions of the domain that it will include. As I said, integration of research in the pharmacy and pharmaceutical science, also promoting the culture of research, ethical research, inquiry, critical thinking, problem solving, and also collaboration that prepare students and educators become a future leader and innovator in the field. The area of research also could include the scholarship of teaching and learning, basic sciences, the translation, research, also implementation sciences. So direct patient care is our need also to focus on it, health economics and health outcomes, public health, data information science, and also social science and other emerging fields. Next, please. So if we are going to speak in general, I summarize it into some issue related to the institutions and some to the researcher and the others to the research by itself. So the institution should foster a visionary and forward-thinking approach to pharmacy and pharmaceutical science education and the training that places a strong emphasis on research integration, integrity, therefore cultivating a research-driven mindset among our educator, practitioner, and students. Also, we encourage all of them to value the research, critically evaluate the research finding, and also in order to for the development of evidence-based practice and innovations. The support the research activities. It is a very important thing by promoting internal and external fund resources. It is a very crucial point. We have to also to concentrate on it. Next, please. By creating human capacity building programs for ensuring the training of the research preceptors, supervisors, and mentors, and also to ensure the students understand the research concept, methodology, and principle that underscore improving patient outcomes and advancing the scientific knowledge, mentoring by research-driven educators. And this is the key process to the research outcomes. Facilitate collaboration. It's an important thing to focus on it between the academia and also the industry, governments, non-governmentals in practice, healthcare, and also all institutions which drive advancement, incorporating this into a pharmaceutical education and training of our students. And also encouraging the dissemination of the research finding of their educator, administrator, also through publication, patent, research, workshop, and also seminars, symposia, abstract, posters, and other research activity and forum. This is also an important issue. Next, please. So when we go to the research by itself, the research efforts should include evidence-based teaching and learning and research-enhanced education. Also, we have to do in the research setting should allow the gathering of the evidence-based data, such as it should be included, and also in order to improve the pharmaceutical technology and large data set analysis. Researcher and educator should be mindful of the emerging area in education, public health, equity, and pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences, as well as other areas that may interest with this field. Thank you very much.
Thanks a million, Dr. Nadia Al-Mazroui, for your overview of Domain 8, which was the final domain to unveil in this webinar. And thank you so much, our guests and our participants, for sticking around. I know we have gone over time, but I'd like now to invite Toyin and Ralph to support me over the coming couple of minutes. We are launching the second poll, colleagues, so that we are able to reflect on it together, but also to engage our participants. Here is the second poll. For the over 200 participants on the call at the moment, which of the domains do you think require particular focus in your country or region? And you can tick more than one focus if you wish. That is the first poll question. And I think that we should be able to see the results on the screen. And Toyin, I can see that you're on camera and you're able to see the results here. Okay. There's a variety of responses coming out from our colleagues from different parts of the world.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, colleagues. We really appreciate you for responding. And it looks like 61% professional competencies, and next, resources and academic staff, research. And then resources and academic staff, and then our shared global vision. Yeah. And then we see experiential education, quality assurance and assessment, students admission process. It looks like, and foundational education. Looks like everything is needed. So that's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have another final question. If we can launch the third poll, please, Marianne. Thanks a million. How could the Nanjing Statements influence pharmacy education strategy in your area? Thank you for being with us and for participating in the poll. And Toyin, we still have more than 200 participants on the call.
Wow. So, thank you, colleagues, for staying with us. What a historic day, huh?
It is. Congratulations, everybody.
Congratulations, everybody.
Okay. And I think we can launch the results. Thanks a million, Marianne. Here we go.
All right. So it looks like we're leading with 70% aligning education with international healthcare goals, 60% guiding continuous professional development, 56% adapting to evolving health professions education, and 51% influencing advocacy and policy making. Colleagues, we know that several options might be of interest to you with these two questions, so feel free to use the chat to put your information in here. Our superstar staff support team will be harvesting all of that and compiling it into an opportunity to sort of share a summary of this report. We really thank you for joining us today. Ralph?
So I'll just respond real quickly to those two pollings. I think it demonstrates that there's a lot of interest in this, and there's action items that people can take home with them, which is really one of the goals we had for this launch. So thank you all for filling out that poll, and wish you well in using them to advance your programs. So do we have any other questions from our audience?
No, we managed to answer those in the Q&A. Ralph, thanks a million.
Good.
And I think thank you so much, our guests, for being with us today, for your contributions over the past couple of years, I would have to acknowledge, and congratulations on the launch. Thanks a million for the 200 participants that still remain with us on the call, even though we've gone over time. We just invite you to watch the recording if you've missed anything via going to events.fip.org. Again, for those of you that don't know, we are going to Copenhagen in Denmark for our 83rd FIP World Congress of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Scientists. For those of you that can and are willing, please do join us, and we look forward to meeting you in person there. All the information is on our website for abstract submissions, for registrations with timelines. Thanks a million, everyone. And I think, Ozge, thank you to you and Marianne, and thanks everyone for attending. Congratulations, everybody.
Thank
well
you.
done.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks a million.
Great
Take
work
care.
today.
Everybody.
Leading up to
Thank
this.
you.
It was great.
Right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good job.
Have a good rest of the day, or have a nice sleep if that's where you are in the
Thank
world.
you. Same to everyone.
Absolutely.